Monday morning in Manhattan's SDNY federal courthouse was unlike any other. The streets were unusually quiet, yet inside the chambers were packed beyond capacity. Reporters, legal aides, marshals, and spectators squeezed into every available space. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but every whispered word, every shuffle of paper, every tense movement was documented by the journalists perched at the edge of their seats. Outside, news crews gathered, live feeds ready to broadcast every development as it unfolded. At the center of this storm sat Diddy Combs, dressed in the standard orange jumpsuit that could never hide the weight of infamy. Gone were the sunglasses, the diamond chains, the confidence that once lit up stages and boardrooms. Now his posture was tense, hands clasped tightly on the table, eyes fixed on the floor. The empire he had built over decades seemed to shrink in that moment, reduced to the vulnerability of a man awaiting judgment. Judge Aaron Subramanian entered with measured steps, his face an unreadable mask of authority. The gavel struck sharply against the desk, echoing through the chamber. "Court is in session," he declared. Every head rose instinctively. The atmosphere was electric, charged with anticipation. This wasn't just another hearing, it was a reckoning. The case had escalated rapidly over the past week. A bottle of fermented alcohol had been discovered, hidden under Diddy's bunk at Fort Dix prison. The discovery wasn't just a minor infraction. It represented defiance, a blatant violation of the trust extended to him when he was previously granted leniency. This single act had triggered an emergency session, pulling Diddy back into the courtroom under the full glare of federal scrutiny. Cassie Venture, the lead prosecutor, was poised and confident, her eyes scanning the room as she prepared to deliver testimony that would change everything. Her reputation for precision and meticulous preparation preceded her. She was a courtroom tactician, calm, controlled, and unyielding. Today, her target was the mogul who had thought himself untouchable. The warden from Fort Dix took the stand first, presenting detailed evidence of the alcohol discovery, photographs of the sealed bottle, lab results confirming ethanol, and the meticulous documentation of the inspection. Each piece of evidence landed like a hammer on the courtroom table. The collective murmur of astonishment among reporters and spectators reflected the severity of the revelation. Diddy's attorney, Mark Agnafilo, tried to interject. "Your Honor, we contend that this is circumstantial. There is no direct evidence that Mr. Combs knowingly possessed." Subramanian's hand shot up, cutting him off. "Not yet, counselor. The court will hear the testimony in full before arguments are made." Then Cassie Venture rose, her voice, controlled but piercing, carried across the courtroom. "Your Honor, what we have here is not a minor oversight. This is a man who promised rehabilitation, who promised change, who mocked the mercy extended to him by this court. Today, we stand to demonstrate that those promises were empty. Mr. Combs' actions are not merely violations. They are deliberate acts of defiance." She presented witness accounts from fellow inmates who had seen Diddy with suspicious cups in the recreation area days before the alcohol was discovered. Some claimed he had bragged about having a special drink to ease the boredom and pressure of prison life. Each statement was consistent, each account reinforcing the narrative that the alcohol had been knowingly possessed and concealed. The tension in the room was palpable. Reporters scribbled furiously, their notebooks full of words that would be broadcast and published within minutes. Even the marshals, normally stoic and composed, leaned forward slightly, sensing the gravity of the moment. Diddy's jaw was tight. The man who had once commanded headlines now seemed to shrink under the weight of incontrovertible testimony. Cassie continued, her tone surgical, stripping away the remnants of Diddy's public persona. "The evidence is clear. The bottle was found in Mr. Combs' personal cell. Lab results confirm it contained ethanol. Inmate testimonies corroborate knowledge and awareness. The question before this court is not merely about possession. It is about trust, accountability, and the rejection of mercy previously granted." Diddy leaned toward Agnafilo, whispering something that no one could hear. His lips quivered slightly. For the first time in decades, he seemed human, vulnerable, anxious, and confronted by the very consequences he had once believed he could evade. Judge Subramanian's gaze remained fixed on Diddy. "Mr. Combs," he said slowly, This court will not be swayed by fame, fortune, or past accomplishments. The facts are clear. Evidence is incontrovertible. We will determine the consequences of these actions without prejudice, but with the full weight of the law. The courtroom held its breath. Outside, social media feeds began to light up. Breaking news alerts flashed across devices, spreading word of the hearing and the explosive testimony that had begun. For Diddy, the man who had built an empire on influence and charisma, the stage had shifted. No cameras, no audience applause, no fanfare, only judgment. In that moment, the entire city seemed to pause. The mogul's legacy, his reputation, and his freedom hung in the balance. And at the center of it all stood Cassie Venture, poised to deliver testimony that would not just challenge a man, it would break him in the eyes of the court and the world. Before we dive into the next shocking developments, make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on. You won't want to miss what happens next. Now, we want to hear from you. If you were in the judge's seat, how would you rule in Diddy's case? And what would be your reasoning? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your opinion could spark the next big discussion. The courtroom seemed to shrink as Cassie Venture continued her testimony. Every word, every carefully chosen phrase struck with precision, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. She walked the jury, the spectators, and Diddy himself through the chain of events that led to the discovery of alcohol in his Fort Dix prison cell. The half-filled amber bottle concealed under his bunk was more than contraband. It was a symbol of defiance and deception. "Your Honor," Cassie said, her voice steady yet unyielding, "officers conducting a routine inspection smelled an unusual scent. Upon further investigation, a plastic bottle containing fermented alcohol was found. It was tested, verified, and logged. The evidence is clear. This was not a mistake or oversight. It was a deliberate act." The defense table shifted. Mark Agnafilo's eyes darted toward Diddy, who sat frozen, jaw tight, hands gripping the edge of the table. His orange jumpsuit seemed to swallow him whole, the very symbol of confinement now matched by the emotional weight of the testimony. Cassie paused, letting the courtroom absorb the gravity. Furthermore, inmate statements corroborate knowledge and intent. Witnesses report seeing Mr. Comey's handling cups suspected of containing alcohol, even boasting about his hidden brew. This court is not simply evaluating a rule violation. It is evaluating the character and intent behind these actions. A murmur rippled through the audience. Reporters frantically scribbled notes, capturing every nuance. Outside, social media feeds erupted in real-time live updates, spreading across platforms before the ink on the courtroom transcripts could even dry. Number Diddy court case and number alcohol violation instantly began trending nationwide. Judge Subramanian leaned back slightly, eyes narrowing. "Proceed, Miss Venture." "Continue," he said, voice calm yet weighted with authority. Cassie's expression hardened, deliberate, each word calculated to leave an impact. "Your Honor, leniency was granted to Mr. Comey's on October 3rd, 2025. The court extended mercy in the hope of rehabilitation. Yet, within weeks, this violation occurred. Actions speak louder than promises, and in this case, the actions demonstrate contempt for the court and a rejection of the opportunity provided." She walked to the evidence table and placed a sealed bag on the surface. The amber liquid shimmered under the courtroom lights. Gasps erupted as the jar caught the reflection of every eye in the room. Reporters froze mid-note, witnesses leaned forward, and Diddy's head lowered slightly. The mogul who once dominated the music industry now seemed almost small, dwarfed by the tangible evidence before him. Cassie continued, voice rising slightly, controlled yet piercing. "Mr. Comey's actions are not isolated incidents. They reflect a pattern of behavior. Charm in public, chaos in private. This is a man who promised sobriety, who promised change, who promised accountability. Yet here we are confronting a deliberate breach of trust." Diddy shifted in his seat, whispering something under his breath to Agnafilo, lips trembling. The whispers were inaudible to the courtroom, but the tension was visible on every face. The judge's pen tapped against the bench in measured rhythm, echoing the gravity of the moment. The prosecution presented surveillance logs, showing activity in the recreation area around the time the alcohol was allegedly consumed. Inmates' statements, previously dismissed as hearsay in other contexts, were now reinforced by timing, corroboration, and consistency. Cassie's voice cut through the layers of doubt. The evidence is cumulative, consistent, and undeniable. It is not only a breach of federal rules, it is a demonstration of deliberate defiance. Mark Agnafilo tried to intervene. Your Honor, these statements are circumstantial, and we contend. Subramanian's hand raised sharply. Not now, counselor. The court will consider your arguments later. We will hear all testimony before deliberation. Cassie paused for a final moment, eyes locking with Diddy's. Sean Commies, the world is watching. The court has granted second chances, but those chances are meaningless without accountability. Today, the truth stands before you, and the consequences must follow. For a fleeting moment, Diddy looked up. His eyes were glassy, a mixture of disbelief, fear, and the faint glimmer of understanding. He realized, perhaps for the first time, that no fame, no fortune, no influence could shield him from the full weight of consequence. The courtroom remained silent, every heartbeat amplified. Reporters leaned forward, pens ready, capturing every syllable. Marshals observed silently, recognizing that this moment would become a historical marker, the day a public figure's persona collided violently with the law. Outside, news feeds exploded with live updates. The public reacted in real time. Shock, outrage, speculation, and divided opinions. Could Diddy survive this legal storm, or had Cassie's testimony sealed the fate of one of the most influential moguls in music history? Inside, one thing was undeniable. The stage had shifted. Sean Diddy Commies was no longer controlling the narrative. The courtroom and Cassie's testimony controlled it now. The courtroom seemed to hold its breath as the defense finally rose to respond. Mark Agnafilo, Diddy's longtime attorney, approached the bench with a mix of urgency and controlled composure. He adjusted his tie, glanced at Diddy, and then turned toward Judge Subramanian, whose expression remained unreadable, a rock of authority amid the storm of testimony. Your Honor, Agnafilo began, voice steady but edged with desperation. While we acknowledge that a bottle was found, we contend that there is no direct evidence linking Mr. Commies to its creation or intended consumption. Inmates' statements are inconsistent, speculative, and motivated by personal gain. My client is being judged not solely on facts, but on assumptions. Diddy's fingers trembled slightly on the table. His jaw was tight, and the tension in his shoulders betrayed the storm inside. For decades, he had faced critics, lawsuits, and scandals, always able to charm, negotiate, or dominate the narrative. But here, under the fluorescent lights of federal authority, he was exposed without protection, stripped of the control that fame had once guaranteed. Judge Subramanian leaned forward, tapping the edge of the bench. Counselor, he said slowly, the court has reviewed photographs, lab results confirming ethanol content, detailed warden reports, and corroborated inmate statements. These are not assumptions. They are evidence. Circumstantial? Perhaps, but cumulative. Compelling? Undeniably so. Agnafilo swallowed hard, glancing down at scattered notes on the table. Your Honor, my client has cooperated fully with prison authorities. He has submitted to inspections, participated in rehabilitation programs, and made statements of accountability. Surely these efforts must weigh in mitigation. Cassie Venture rose again, walking toward the bench with calm authority. Your Honor, cooperation cannot erase deliberate defiance. My client has presented documented proof that Mr. Commies not only possessed alcohol, but engaged in behavior that undermines the court's trust. Leniency was granted in the hope of rehabilitation, and yet, within weeks, this violation occurred. Actions, not promises, define accountability. Diddy lowered his head, lips pressed together, as if trying to ground himself. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. Reporters scribbled furiously, their pens capturing each piercing word. The spectators shifted in their seats, sensing that the moment of reckoning was approaching. The prosecution introduced a timeline of events from Fort Dix, showing that the alcohol was discovered on a random Friday inspection just days after Diddy had been granted leniency. Surveillance logs, recreational area schedules, and witness testimonies were combined to demonstrate not only possession, but awareness and intentional concealment. Agnafilo's face betrayed fatigue. Your Honor, we maintain that this evidence does not establish intent beyond a reasonable doubt. My client's life, his reputation, and his future are being jeopardized on a single incident, which could be the result of circumstances outside his control. Cassie countered sharply, her voice steady, precise, and unwavering. Outside his control? Your Honor, the prison sweep confirmed that only one cell contained the alcohol, Mr. Comey's cell. Lab tests proved ethanol presence. Witnesses observed him with the suspected drink. This was not happenstance. This was choice. The tension in the room escalated as the judge leaned back slightly, reviewing the evidence with an unwavering gaze. He scanned the faces of the jury, reporters, and spectators, acknowledging the gravity of what had unfolded. The moment wasn't just about alcohol in a cell. It was about the betrayal of trust, defiance of authority, and failure to honor an opportunity for rehabilitation. Diddy finally spoke, his voice trembling but audible. Your Honor, I didn't make it. I didn't hide it. I don't know how it got there. Somebody's trying to destroy me. Cassie's eyes narrowed slightly, her expression unyielding. Your Honor, denial is not evidence. The court must act on the facts presented. Possession confirmed, lab results verified, intent implied through corroborated statements. Judge Subramanian's pen hovered over the sentencing papers, the room silent except for the faint shuffle of paper and the scribbling of reporters. Every eye was fixed on him. The weight of history, public scrutiny, and legal precedent pressed down on the chamber. Outside, social media feeds erupted with speculation, live commentary, and trending hashtags. Inside, the courtroom was a pressure cooker of tension, anticipation, and inevitable consequence. The judge finally exhaled slowly. I have heard all testimony. I have reviewed all evidence. The court will now deliberate and deliver a sentence that reflects not only the actions, but the intent and accountability of the defendant. Diddy's hands clenched, his body rigid. He realized the empire he had controlled for decades, the image he had curated, and the influence he had wielded meant nothing here. In this room, under the authority of law, all were equal, and the reckoning he had long delayed was imminent. The courtroom fell into a tense silence as Judge Aaron Subramanian leaned forward, resting his elbows on the bench. Every eye was fixed on him, every breath held in anticipation. For Diddy, the moment felt eternal, a culmination of weeks of legal maneuvering, public scrutiny, and the crushing weight of his own choices. Outside, news vans idled, social media feeds exploded, and millions were already watching updates in real time. Inside, time had slowed to a near halt. Mr. Commies, the judge began, his voice deliberate, steady, and resonant. This court granted you leniency in the hopes of rehabilitation, in the belief that a man of influence and means could honor an opportunity for reform. You promised sobriety. You promised accountability. And yet, within weeks, we are presented with evidence that shows deliberate violation of those promises. The warden's report, the photos of the amber liquid, the lab results confirming ethanol, and the corroborated inmate statements had all painted an unassailable picture. Diddy's defense team had argued circumstantial evidence and alleged motives to discredit witnesses. But the courtroom remained unconvinced. Cassie Venture's presentation had been precise, controlled, and damning, leaving no room for ambiguity. Judge Subramanian continued, eyes locking with Diddy's. This is not merely a matter of alcohol found in a prison cell. It is a matter of trust. It is a matter of integrity. It is a matter of whether a man who has been granted mercy can honor the rules of the system that extended it to him. Diddy's head remained lowered, lips pressed tight. For decades, he had cultivated an image of power, charisma, and untouchability. But here, under the stark fluorescent lights, all that remained was a man confronted by the consequence of his choices. The court, the witnesses, and the public had seen the reality behind the celebrity facade. The judge paused, letting the weight of his words settle. The court acknowledges your prior contributions to society, your public influence, and your attempts at rehabilitation. However, actions speak louder than statements. Evidence shows that within a short period, you engaged in behavior that directly violated federal rules, demonstrated contempt for authority, and jeopardized the very opportunities you were given. The air in the courtroom was suffocating. Marshals stood motionless behind Diddy, reporters poised with pens hovering over notebooks, and spectators leaned forward, sensing that history was being written. Even Diddy seemed to understand finally that no charm, no influence, no carefully constructed narrative could sway the authority of the law. Therefore, Judge Subramanian said, voice low but commanding, this court has reached its decision. By the authority of the Southern District of New York, and in accordance with federal law, the sentence previously granted is hereby upgraded to reflect the severity of these violations. A hush swept over the room. Diddy's attorney opened his mouth, perhaps to protest, but the judge's hand stopped him. Counselor, the court has heard arguments and reviewed evidence. There will be no further delay. The judge's pen hovered over the sentencing papers before he spoke the words that would reverberate across the country. Sean Diddy Combs, this court sentences you to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The room erupted in chaos. Reporters gasped, scribbled furiously, and shouted into phones to deliver live updates. Spectators murmured in disbelief, some covering their mouths in shock, others whispering to each other. Outside, helicopters circled, cameras flashed, and social media exploded with trending hashtags. Number sign Diddy life sentence. Number sign Cassie testimony. Number sign justice served. Diddy remained frozen, jaw tight, hands clasped on the table. For a moment, he looked almost incredulous, as if the words hadn't fully registered. Then slowly he lowered his head, the weight of the reality pressing down upon him. His empire, his influence, his image, everything he had built over decades, had collapsed in a single morning. Cassie Venture, poised and composed, remained standing. Her work was done. She had dismantled the defenses, presented evidence, and ensured that the truth would hold sway. Justice, in its measured and relentless form, had prevailed. Judge Subramanian concluded, his voice heavy with finality. May this sentence serve as a reminder that no one, regardless of status or fame, is above the law. Redemption is only possible when it is earned through consistent actions. And the court finds that, in this case, it has been refused. Diddy was led out by marshals. The courtroom's heavy doors closed behind him, the echo resonating like a drumbeat of finality. Outside, crowds reacted, some with cries of victory, others with shock and sorrow. The mogul who had once dominated the music and business world now faced the full and irreversible consequences of his actions. Even as news anchors recapped the events live, experts debated the implications, and fans reacted emotionally. The reality inside the courtroom was clear. Diddy had been broken by truth, evidence, and accountability.